first of all, I just want to talk to the audience for a second. You're welcome to be here, take notes, whatever you want to do. You just can't raise any questions because we don't have citizen participation. You know, for the selectmen, they have that, but committees like this is a working committee. We have a tremendous task that we have to undertake here, so we don't have that, but we appreciate you coming. The other thing is, I think, you know, decency and respect is most important for the membership when we talk to each other, when we ask questions and all that. So I thought the last meeting was a little bit out of order, and we can't have that because people are watching. Matter of fact, a couple of nights ago, a couple of high school kids called me and said that they watched the meeting and they were intrigued by it, but they were also intrigued by some of the comments back and forth. And I said, well, those things happen, but we have to remember, and I explained to these two juniors, senior and junior, that this committee was put together by town meeting. It has representation from the selectmen, from the town meeting, and the moderator. So we represent the town. It's an important position because 20 years ago or 23 years ago, we had the same process. We came up with some interviewees. We came to the selectmen, and we're able to hire an outstanding chief. And he's been here for 19 years. So I think this committee wants to do the same thing, all right? Another thing is this. I've been through this probably 4 or 5 times, and I think, you know, there's an urgency to it. We have to be judicious, but we have to have an urgency to get the work done. Like tonight, over the past month, Jody and Maureen, our HR person, working with the chief, have done a yeoman's job of looking at the job description, updating it, putting in all the things that the chief has done over the 19 years that most chiefs do these days, but 20 years ago it wasn't here. So it's most important that that job gets updated. And one of the things I want to ask the committee, because the committee, it's a working committee, we have to work together towards a goal. And we have to keep our eye on the goal. I want to see if we could meet next Tuesday, April 30th, just to tighten up the job description if there's anything else that has to be done. Because as far as the process, once the committee decides on a job description, and these job descriptions were approved back in 2014-15, when the personnel board hired a firm, they came in, they did all the job descriptions. So once we get it approved by the committee, then there's a protocol, we go to the selectmen, and they'll take a quick look at it and approve it, I'm sure they will. And then it goes to Scott's committee, the personnel board. So once that's done, then we're ready to post. So, you know, we have a time frame. We want to try to get this done by, you know, once we get all the applications back, and we'll decide on the process on that. Once we get all the applications back on the posting, we have to go through them. We have to come up with some type of rating schedule. We have to see who do we put aside, who do we interview, and all that. And then the work really gets involved with background checks, personal, Department of Revenue, all that stuff. Because when you're working in the police department, you've got to have honest cops, men and women. And so what the chief went through 18, 19 years ago, everybody else will go through. And then the selectmen, once they get it, they'll have their own process. So it's a pretty unique process. I think we all agree, and I'll write a letter to the selectmen on behalf of this committee, that in October, they should review the bylaw, because there are some things that should be tweaked. There should be 13, not 12. The language, the ambiguity of the language, so that things have to be tightened up. But it worked the first time. It'll work this time. It will make it even better last time. Town councils, I invited town council, as the committee directed me. There's a copy in the folder. I've spoken to town council twice. He offered us 2 opinions, and you have those similar opinions backing each other up. He stands by his opinion. This guy was approved by the selectmen on a unanimous vote. There were glowing recommendations, comments when he was presented to the community, and the town council's word is what it is. Otherwise, it'd be total chaos. So, like I said last week, I'm going to ask Michael Walsh, he can sit in the audience, he can take notes, he can listen, but he's not part of the committee, and Don Nero is now part of the committee.
Objection.
Wait a minute, we're not going to do it like we did last week.
I object.
You can object.
That's all I said, I object.
Yes, and I disagree.
You can continue.
Okay, and so, Michael, I don't know if you'd like to say a few words to the...
Dino, I just want you to know that, I want everybody to know that I've hired counsel, and I've been recommended to stay here. I'll be very quiet. I won't, as I said to you earlier, I'm not going to be disrespectful. I'm going to sit here, but I've been recommended that I sit here because there's nothing in the clause that says to remove me. So go ahead, continue the meeting. You and I spoke earlier about moving the process forward. Go ahead. But Dino, I'm not leaving the table.
You won't have a voting, you won't
That's
vote.
okay.
Yeah.
Now, just the process, and 1 second,
That's
one
what
second,
that's
one
for.
second, all right? What happens, and Mike has a right to do this because he was the aggrieved member on the board. So what happens, he has a right to obtain counsel and to go to Worcester Superior Court. And he has a right to do that on his own dime. Once he does that, what the selectmen will do is they'll tell the town council Bodie to support the selectmen's and town council's opinion in court. And then the judge will make a rendering, whether it be a few days, a week, or whatever the case may be. The judge may even say, and I'm not sure, but some of the things that I've read, the judge may say, until further notice that I've made a decision, that we have to suspend our meetings, and then once he makes a decision, we can continue. But for tonight's meeting, Mike is not a voting member. As far as I'm concerned, town council, and hopefully the majority of members on this committee feel that, listen, this could happen either way. In this particular time, when the town council made a decision, it went one way. So when Chairman Buckley made that statement at town meeting, according to according to town council, he had the right to do that. So some of us may disagree, but we go by the rule of law, we go by town council's opinion, and we move forward. Donato.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of points here. First of all, we have two people in controversy. We have no authority to remove or appoint anybody. We, as a group. The bylaw tells us who is on this committee. We have a controversy. That controversy has to be resolved by the appointing authority. In this case, the Board of Selectmen. He doesn't have to get anybody. He sits here because he was appointed. The Board of Selectmen, and I would suggest you write them a letter, you tell them about the issue, and you tell them they can do whatever they want to do. But they are the moving party, not him. He's legitimately appointed here at one point in time. I understand the controversy. But we are not the appointing authority. We aren't to make any decisions about whether he votes or he doesn't vote. Those are not our decisions. He occupies a legitimate position. I understand you want to offer an opinion. I understand the town council offered an opinion. The only person going to resolve this is the court. And we are not the moving party. The Board of Selectmen decide how they're going to get him off. And they, in their town council, they go to court and a judge makes that determination. Might be some controversy as to whether, since we have a member of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Selectmen are the moving party, whether they can be, whether town council can represent them, but that's not our problem.
No.
The other thing is, I think as part of this process, we have to decide what we're going to do as a group. I think you alluded to that. And I offered the opinion last time, we don't suspend anything. We keep perfect records as to who said what, who did what, who voted on what. And as long as there's no controversy, and we're not into the selection process, then I don't want to tell you we're safe, but I can tell you that it probably doesn't make any difference whether Mike stays or Donna stays. Suspending, I think, is a drastic move and nonsensical, because this could take years to resolve.
Well,
You take anything to
go
court.
ahead. Okay, I
So,
respect your
we
opinion.
try to do what probably makes common sense as a group.
Right.
All right.
I've spoken to Town Council Bodie several occasions, all right? He wrote it, he was very direct with me on what has to happen, and he said that Donna Nero was on the committee, and with all due respect, Mike, you're not on the committee. And you have every right to hire counsel and to go to Worcester, okay? And then that'll be decided in court. But the selectmen, this committee has no authority, no legal authority to do anything.
Right.
Every town meeting, annual town meeting, Mike, Jim, I see your hand, I'll call on you.
You will call me, thank you.
And I call on everybody, as long as you're recognized. Every town meeting, annual town meeting, next month, there's an article, I think it's Article 6, 7, that the selectmen, vote for the selectmen to go to court in litigation for or against the town. The selectmen are the only ones that can do that. We have no legal authority to do anything. We can't go to court. We cannot go to court. The selectmen will represent their opinions and their recommendation to town council to go to court and to file whatever motions so that his interpretation will stand, and the selectmen approve that. It might be a 2-to-1, whatever the case may be, but that'll be the process. And so, Mike, once again, if you want to stay there, all right, I'm not going to throw you out. I'm not going to have the police chief bring an officer down here to escort you out. I won't do that, okay?
I'd do it personally.
All right. But in order to get this thing going, all right, because there's a seriousness here, we have to do the job that we're appointed to do here. So you can stay there, you won't vote, the records will show that again. We'll also include both opinions in the records that town council has given us, and we have to move forward because we have two wonderful ladies. Donato, just a few seconds, then I'll go to Jim.
I will repeat myself. You have no authority to say that Mike can't vote.
The authority
You
I have is
no,
from town council.
the town council has nothing to do with
Yes,
this.
he does.
He
Dan,
offers
we're
an opinion.
going back and forth.
I understand that,
Okay.
but we
Go
have
ahead.
we have to be able to say that we did the right thing,
And I'm trying to do the right thing,
okay?
based on town council. Because listen, we have a
But
lot
the
of work
town
to do.
council can't advise you to do something. He has no
He gave us
control
opinion,
over us.
and that's going to be dealt with in court.
This board of
His opinion.
selectmen are the appointing authority
Right,
here, not
absolutely.
us.
No. All right, so Mike, you've heard it, we're going to, Jim?
And, excuse me, but we should vote on, if you're going to insist
No,
on this,
that-
then we vote on this.
No, we can't vote on it because I've asked town council, and the motion's out of order, Dan.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, it's out of order.
Why
We have
would
to
a-
proceed, because we have to go by something. And town council, that's the individual who gives counsel to all the
Yes.
committees, all the boards, selectmen, everyone.
But it's counsel, it's
Okay.
advice.
That's right. But it's advice that
We
we're
have to
gonna take.
decide whether we're going to implement that
Okay.
advice.
Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mike.
I don't disagree with much of what Mr. Nero said. However, you indicated that this committee has important work, and we do. And this committee is independent based on bylaw. And what is our mission? Our mission is to seek out the best candidates and submit them to the Board of Selectmen. Agree 100%.
And we can't go against the bylaw that town meeting adopted, the intent of town meeting.
Well, I was going to end my statement with, I want to say what I want to say before I end my statement with what I've said before, which is in disagreement with Mr. Nero. Our loyalty is to the citizens of this community. I'm not concerned about what the Board of Selectmen is trying to do. Frankly, they did their job, and they should stay out of it right now. It's our job to do what we're supposed to do. And we have a dilemma. We have to deal with the elephant in the room.
We are.
Week after week, decisions are being made by that board.
Okay, Jim, you're out of order now. No, no, we can't, no,
Okay.
that stuff, there's a lot of hearsay, a lot of stuff's going
No,
on.
I
Right, that's
hearsay.
it. Okay.
I'm not done speaking, and
No,
my
no,
voice will
that's
not be
it.
silenced.
No, you can say
I'm not
whatever you
done
want,
speaking.
Jim, okay?
I'm not done speaking. My
Okay,
voice will
don't
not
talk
be
about,
silenced.
talk about what we're talking about.
Mr. Chairman.
Not about hearsay, what's going on, and anything like that.
Yeah.
Has
Now
nothing to
what?
do with us,
No,
okay?
my voice will not be silenced. I'm not, what I'm saying is not hearsay.
You must have read that someplace, but go ahead, finish up.
That's an insult,
Well,
and I object.
You can take it.
Okay?
Go ahead.
My
What else
voice,
you
you're
want?
gonna silence my voice.
No, go ahead, what else you want to say? We have to get to what we're supposed to be
Okay,
doing.
Selectman Kincaid stated this publicly.
Don't
It's not-
say that, Jim. What
He
happens
said
if
that
the
this
select-
committee could take up to 1 year to do its job. That's public.
He can say whatever they want.
Yeah.
And
He
you
can say
disagree
whatever
with
they
it?
want.
What is our rush?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
No, wait a minute, no. This is, if I could say something, all right? Every time I've been.
I'm in the middle of speaking. I don't know why you keep
I just wanna say,
interrupting.
because I.
Why can't I speak
I-
like everyone else does, and you can say whatever you
All
want
right, try to
afterwards?
finish up if you can.
Selectman Kincaid stated at a public meeting on TV that this process could take up to a year. And with all the controversy, Mr. Bertarelli likes to refer to it, why are we in such a rush to get them names when there's legal rulings standing by waiting? You're not going to deny that there's a half a dozen complaints pending that could play out in the next 6 months.
They may.
And,
We all know that, Jim. We all know that.
okay,
And to answer your
I'm
your
glad you
comments.
know.
Okay. We all know that the police force is a great police force.
Okay,
We
that's
all
all
know,
I'm
no,
talking
let me
about.
say it.
So
We
I
all
was
know-
gonna
wait a
finish.
minute, wait a minute. The reason why I say that.
Why are you interrupting me?
I didn't interrupt you, okay.
Yeah, you did.
The acting chief,
Several times.
my opinion is this. The acting chief should be in there for 2 or 3
You have
months.
12 members
whatever
that have
the case may
opinions.
be. Right, and they will. Our job is to move forward, okay?
Okay.
The job, you know the job of a police officer, with all the pressures, the stresses on the individual, the family and all that. What happens when you have an interim chief for a long period of time? There's uncertainty, there's apprehension. So that's why it's most important. I'm not saying we have to rush it, but our job is to do it over 3 or 4 months. Give the selectmen the 3 or 5 candidates, whatever, unranked, and then they choose some. Ed?
Dino, we spent the last meeting doing a similar thing, and we had 2 people who did a lot of preparation.
Absolutely.
Jody and the HR director who sat here and got nothing accomplished. I think the beginning of the conversation was a good one. We have a ruling from the town council, okay? You advised Mike, if he is unhappy with it, and you said you would go out and appeal the ruling, which is, I think, everyone's right to do. That said, we're at that stage. Now, couple that with what Donato said, the fact is, we're not gonna have any votes for a long time that matter. And so, in a sense, we can still start our work with all the information that these people have done and start to go through it, rather than every meeting venting our own feelings about, we all have feelings about this. Okay, you said I used the word controversial, it's beyond controversial, okay? So,
Thank you.
But knowing that after 30 or 40 years in town life, we know that. But as you say, we've got a job to do, and I think we can move forward, knowing what we know with the legal ruling from the town council, which is in many cases binding. Mike is gonna go and, find out if it is, but we wanna be in a safe legal position as we move forward. If we're corrected, what we had was good intentions, we went by the town council. If the court reverses it, we're still on safe ground because we did what the town council advised, the judge or a magistrate or whoever may disagree. So I think we've just got to proceed now, but we could talk every meeting and say the same things which we said the last meeting, and again, have the work of the people here go unlooked at, and that's crazy.
What's
from
the
my
rush?
view. I'm not saying there's a rush, Jim, at all, so.
Michael?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, I would ask that, and I know you don't want to hear this, but I would ask that you move forward and adjourn this meeting. And the reason that I do is out of due respect to Mr. Bertarelli, town council is not a legal ruling, it's an opinion. And I stated that, let me finish.
No, I'm not gonna say anything. Go ahead.
I stated at the last meeting, that's an opinion, that's an opinion. And I don't feel that, and I feel bad for Maureen and all the work that she's done. And Mr. Chairman, nobody cares more about this community than I do. I should say, oh, we all do, that's why we serve here on these committees. But I feel that we're not gonna get anywhere tonight. And what I would ask you to do, Mr. Chairman, is adjourn the meeting, and I promise you that I will be back by the time you set the next meeting, and I will have a ruling, whether I'm here or I'm not here. But, until that comes out of the court, Mr. Chairman, until that comes out of the court, I'm still here. And I'm gonna be quiet. I promise you that I'm gonna be quiet, but I'm not gonna be heard. And I don't mean that I don't want this committee to go forward. I do truly want you to go forward. Mr. Chairman, as people know, I'm a sitting member of the Board of Selectmen. Nobody wants more than to have the next police chief picked in this community. But Mr. Chairman, we can't do it. We can't do it because there's too much undecipheredness. And I would ask you as chairman to can't postpone this meeting, even if it's next week, whatever it is, and I promise you that I will come forward and I will personally give you a ruling.
We don't have it.
Joni?
I'd like to say that, this is my first experience with town politics. I've not been involved in anything before, and I certainly understand that there are different sides on this argument. I don't have a fight on either side. But some of this work is not something that has to be voted on. I mean, I think it's just simple review of job description with kind of somewhat minor changes, but things that would probably be necessary. And there's a job posting that was also written. There's some examples of what we looked at to get to where we got. And I think it would not be wise to postpone doing this week after week because, I mean, granted, there's not a rush, but we do want to come to some kind of agreement on something, but there's no vote necessary on any of this information. So it just doesn't seem reasonable that we can't move forward on this.
I've read it and I like it.
Thank
And
you.
you've done good work.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you remove Mike as a voting member, whatever your reasons might be, and 6 months from now, a year from now, the court determines that he is a sitting member, you have no way of curing what you just decided. The thought process is, you don't do anything because you have no authority to do anything. You leave both of them as voting members. You record their votes. You record what they say the best we can, and we move forward. But if you disrupt or corrupt this process by making an improper decision right now, I understand you're basing it on town council. He has nothing to do with this committee. He offered us an opinion.
I disagree, but that's okay.
But if you make a mistake from the beginning, you have no way of curing this 6 months from now. The issue becomes, it was all wrong from the beginning, and you can't do a thing about it.
Can I work on a big committee, and I have to deal with 15 members a lot. Can we just, we've gone 4 meetings and we haven't even looked at a job description. We know that this is not a voting thing tonight. Can we just compromise and just say we're gonna review and not vote on anything tonight, and then we accommodate Mike's presentation that he will have something at the next meeting. We'll accommodate the women who worked very hard to put this together. Jimmy's already said we've already reviewed this. Can we just take this time, since we already came out here, you already missed half of the Bruins game, just review this, not vote on anything. Not vote on anything. We make the commitment to not vote on anything. until Mike gets his ruling, and then at least we don't come out here for nothing. Just review the information and do no voting
I think
today.
that would be very wise.
And then, you know,
Okay.
I think that that's a compromise. I
Let's
mean,
go.
Yes, 'cause
and a
you're
lot
right.
of people have said that tonight
Sure.
in little bits. Mr. Nero, you said that, let's go along, and Maureen, I mean, can we just look at the stuff, not vote, and then Mike will get his ruling at the next meeting, and then we'll go from there, and
After
go.
the chief, we'll go to Jody, and we'll go to Maureen. Chief?
I agree with Chris's point. Why don't we look at the job description? And we'll take a look at the proposed advertisement. It's not a matter of vote. I mean, at some point, we have to say, yes, this is what we recommend.
And then we'll adjourn the
And then
meeting.
we send it on.
Yeah.
And at least we get that done, number one. Number
All
two, you can't have two people vote, with all due respect. The bylaw has 12 members.
That's right.
You can't have 13. It's a violation of the bylaw. And Dan, I get your point, because if one gets nullified, then the other one was valid.
Let's go then.
I don't have the answer for that, so my suggestion is exactly what Chris said. Don't vote on anything. So let's look at it. If you have something to offer, to add to it, delete from it,
Yeah. Okay,
speak up.
thanks, Tom.
We're actually gonna do work, amazing.
Scott, a few
As
seconds.
it relates to that, yep, so actually as it relates to that, as we go forward with this, the piece that requires the personnel board approval is a change in job description. The posting actually doesn't require
No.
personnel board approval. So I think if we continue to move forward with what we want to post, and then as we go forward, yeah, job descriptions, absolutely, but we can actually post before we.
Sure, the selectmen
job.
and the personnel. So at this time, I'm going to ask Jody and Maureen.
Hey.
Come on up, Maureen. Jody?
Mr. Chairman, point.
No, let them come up. Come on, Jody, come on, Maureen. These ladies have worked very hard for the past month, and they have a good product for us. For the people who don't know, this is Maureen Giffen, a new HR person for the selectmen, for the town, and Jody, our committee member.
No Celia.
Huh? No Celia, that's right. I like that. Okay, Maureen, Jody, go ahead.
Thank you for allowing us just to present the work that we've done. Maureen and I met a couple weeks ago now, and we both decided that we were going to do some research to start. I looked at openings that they had for chiefs of police across the nation. Maureen focused a little bit more on what was in Massachusetts. And a sample of that, this is not all by any means, but a sample of that I've passed out, just to give you an idea of what was included in some of these descriptions. The salaries are varied greatly from location to location, as it should. But the way that these descriptions or postings, actually, these are, some of them, in some cases, I would say, Maureen, they're job postings, and in other cases, I think what had happened was they posted an entire job description. So you'll see a combination of both.
Yeah, one of the things we wanted to highlight is this town has developed a very specific template in 2015 for what our job descriptions will look like. And those are the more lengthy documents that you have. And they have very specific categories. My understanding is that the consultant that they brought in, this was the setup. And just so folks know, I'm actually reviewing every job description for the town, and I'm bringing them all to the personnel board as I get them done. So it's not unusual that we would be looking at this one. It's been 5 years or so since they were done, and so I'm just going through with a different point of view and looking at those. And then job postings are different. That's what you put, often it's a shorter version, but as Jody said, sometimes people put the whole job description, and we just wanted to give you a sample of what that looks like so you could see the difference between the two. I think one of the other things to our approach was, Jody and I think we loved collaborating together. We had a lot of phone calls, a lot of back and forth through email, and then actual in-person meetings. But neither of us have ever hired a police officer, and not wanting to sort of compromise the integrity of what was already done on the original one, but making sure that it was updated appropriately. We also got advice from the chief, and thank you for that, to make sure that we didn't add information that wasn't appropriate for the state of Massachusetts, that violated any laws or statutes or other things, and we needed that guidance, so.
So if there aren't any questions at this point,
Everybody has the information, right, Jody?
yes, everybody has the information. Maybe we could take an opportunity to look at the position description. There weren't a lot of changes, some slight modifications.
This is the job description we're talking about now.
This is the job
Yes, the
description.
length of the work.
The one that says revised.
Revised 2019,
Joe,
yes.
how are we going to do this? Can I ask you a question?
Uh,
Well, it's-
Let them start, then we can ask questions, okay?
But that's the point, starting. Could you just cover the changes that you made? Or at least point them out as you go along?
Sure.
All right, thank you.
So in the first paragraph, under the statement of duties, there just sometimes just a change of the words, you know, it could be placed in front or behind something. So starting from the very beginning, the
Just
chief-
substantive changes are good.
Yeah, I think one of them is, there's a lot that we just sort of changed the grammar or wordsmith
Right.
it just a
Not
little bit, and I'm
important.
not sure that that's impactful enough for us to need to
discuss
review.
it.
So I think if we just sort of hit some of the highlights of maybe bullets that we've added, or things that are more substantial changes, that might be more
Yeah,
helpful.
if everybody's okay with that, that would be great.
And then any questions that the committee members have. okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this has some of
So
the
within the
things that we
statement,
took out.
yeah, within the statement of duties, I think most of that really was mostly wordsmithing. We put in, one of the things that Jody and I did when we looked at all of these other job descriptions across the state and across the country was just see if there were some language in there that we thought was important, that reflected the work that the current chief is doing that might not have been included in the first one. So putting in something that says the employee provides strategic direction and oversight. That was an important piece. It's certainly a leadership position, and you want to capture that that's the core, that's the essence of this position. So within statement of duties, that's the kind of phrasing that we added in there. And then I think one of the other ones here, the sentence we added was the police chief is responsible for maintaining and improving the efficiency and effectiveness of all areas under his or her direction and control. So some of these, that again, most of these you're going to find are not changing the essence of this job description, but it just makes sure that candidates coming in understand the leadership in particular that's required of a role at this level.
Yeah, under supervision required, we just actually took out a line that talked about responsible for town performance standards, because that was elsewhere.
Right.
I think this is the main change.
Right, under supervisory responsibility, the original first sentence was removed and replaced with the chief of police supervises professional, paraprofessional, and support staff, providing direction, engaging, and motivating employees. Responsible for implementation of procedures for hiring, performance management, and evaluation.
And discipline.
Oh, thank you, and discipline.
And then we just wordsmithed a few things. We did take out a few more sentences, but again, it's just because we included that same language in a different way within the
We
bullets.
reworded it. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not substantive.
Yeah.
If you pulled something out, like you just mentioned, if it's not substantive, it's not important to me, but
Correct.
If you did pull something out, would you point that out?
So there's going to be a lot. I think the challenge, and I'm happy to
We're
do
not talking
that.
about grammar or wordsmithing or anything. If you pulled out something from the old one,
Okay.
and it's not picked up in the new one, I'd like to know that.
If it's not picked up. If it
Right.
is picked up, then you don't.
In other
yes,
locations,
no.
I think the only challenge we might have here is that some of the things that we took out, so for example, under supervisory responsibility, there were some phrases in there, and we have to check because we added some back in, so we want to make sure. There were some things, actually, the chief was really helpful that we pulled out, and the chief said, no, these are really important to leave in. In some cases, we might have pulled them out of supervisory and then added them to a category
Someplace
where
else.
it made more sense. I'm not sure that Jody and I will be able to capture all of that right now in
Not
this discussion,
important,
but
as
we
long
can
as
certainly
we
go
didn't
through.
drop something that I'd
Absolutely.
like to know about.
Those weren't substantive changes. They were just wordsmithing.
Just do the best you can. I think,
Okay.
you know.
And you've
Dan
all
makes
got
a
the
good
original copy and the new one as well, so you can feel
Sure.
free to look at those, but we did make sure that everybody agreed with the changes that were made.
Okay, so under confidentiality, we put the addition in, the employee is expected to act with the highest integrity and is responsible for maintaining confidentiality of all records, whether designated confidential or not, within the parameters of applicable law.
And I'll tell you, that phrase has gone into every new job description I've done. I've met with town council, and for some reason, all of the job descriptions note how much access to confidentiality people have in their role, but there's nothing about the consequences of violating
Well,
that.
we added that in, it was added, and we actually changed the added language because the language that was initially put in would put the police chief in violation of the public records law. So, working with Maureen, we went over that, and I said, wait a second, you can't classify all records as confidential, and therefore they're not public records. They're all public records under the public records law unless you hit one of the exemptions. So, working with Maureen and working with town council, we worked that out. So, it's not a big change, it's actually consistent with the public records law now.
So under judgment, we removed a sentence that stated, guidelines only provide limited guidance for performing the work. We didn't feel that that was appropriate in this section.
You said it one more time. Can you repeat it one more
Just say
time?
one more time.
Sure. Under,
Under judgment.
thank you, judgment, guidelines only provide limited guidance for performing the work.
Thank you.
No change under complexity. Under work environment, so there was an addition, work may be performed in an office, in a police cruiser, and in all outdoor weather conditions, and under routine, emergency, and stressful circumstances, and often without backup, except as available through mutual assistance arrangements. Work requires a high degree of individual tolerance to combinations of extremely unpleasant elements.
And that part we knew before.
Yes.
That first one was just to acknowledge that while the chief's leadership role often is within the town building more so, that there are occasions when, as he and I discussed, he might have to jump in a cruiser and be off as well. So we wanted to make sure that we were encompassing all of the different environments that he might be exposed to.
So part of that same section, at the very end of that section, we added to the last sentence, while exposed to job site hazards such as traffic accidents, disasters, and emergency situations. Yes.
The first sentence appears to leave out that it could be any place, especially many unpleasant environments. It talks about the office and the police cruiser. He could be any place in the midst of where a bomb went off. There should be an all-encompassing phrase in there.
Do you have any suggestions?
Any type of environment.
Well, I think that's where we had in all outdoor weather conditions. It actually should just be outdoor conditions as well. But you're right, it could be anything.
Okay.
We can certainly add something that's more broad and encompassing.
Okay.
That puts something in there, so thank you.
I'm just making a note.
Dan, you clear on that? Clear on that?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Including but not limited to. If you use that language at the beginning.
Right.
And then list out those, I think that creates it,
Yep.
makes it much more all-encompassing. You're listing off a couple, it would be impossible to try and include every single possible working condition as they're constantly changing.
I agree.
Well, it speaks to emergency and stressful circumstances, so.
Yes. Yeah.
We put this back.
Covers the what?
Talk about that.
We did. Oh, we don't have that one.
So,
That's the only thing.
yeah, under nature and purpose of public contact, the last sentence was added. This position represents the town on policy and procedural matters directly related to the police department.
What that means is that we talked about public meetings. In this community, there's an expectation, if you have a community meeting, whatever the setting, whether it be at the library, here at the senior center, whatever public building, town hall, and it's matters related to the police department, if you're the police chief, you should avoid delegating that, especially if it's a controversial matter. It shouldn't be you delegate it down to someone else to go take the heat. It's your responsibility. Be there. Answer to the residents of the community. So that's why I suggested adding that sentence. That it's not that person, I'm the leader, I get to duck. No. It's your responsibility. Be there and answer to the people that pay you every week.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, and there are no changes to occupational risk. So we move on to essential functions. Under item number 1, we just added establishes short and long-range goals. And on the second line, based upon the current and future needs. There's no change to number 2. We added number 3 in its entirety. Ensures departmental compliance with all applicable codes, laws, rules, regulations, standards, policies and procedures, adhering to established safety procedures, monitoring the work environment and use of safety equipment to ensure safety of employees and other individuals.
One of the things we're going to hit, because we took out inspects here, but it is in one of the other bullets, so I know it was important to you, and we did leave that in the language further on, so we can come back to that. Number 4, there was a bullet at the beginning that talked about inspecting the personnel, and the chief and I had a good discussion around that. It's definitely a key function, and I believe that it's in one of the later bullets. And we did put in there that they provides leadership and guidance to all police personnel, setting goals and expectations, and addressing issues and concerns affecting the department.
Okay, number 5 is separate. And under number 5, we added the section that says, for crime prevention and law enforcement, negotiates and maintains mutual aid agreements. This we took out.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry.
Okay. There was some wording that was taken out after that, which read, the apprehension and detention of wanted persons with other town departments where activities of the police department are involved.
And again, it was just intended to make it a broader statement rather than a very specific, since they do so much within the town.
Under the next number 6, we added the statement about creating and maintaining positive public relationships, or relations, rather. Under number 7, beginning with the second sentence, directs the forecasting of additional funds needed to ensure adequate law enforcement personnel, service programs, activities, and related tools and supplies and equipment. That was an addition.
Number 7. Sorry. On number 7, that last sentence says seeks financial grant assistance. If there's a way to, I'm just thinking about it from that could potentially be interpreted as that individual is now responsible for personally seeking it. And though I realize the chief's role is to write a lot of the grants, there are a lot of other officers that may be doing it. We may at some point, to your point, have a grant writer and without supports financial grants assistance, something to just change up that language. Just
Whether you have a grant writer or not, the fact is, the general law, the police chief manages the police department day-to-day operations to include the equipment, personnel, and the total operation. So if you have a grant writer at town hall, it's the police chief's obligation to go and help seek those grants. Now, someone that writes it, I have multiple police officers that we're taught to write grants, so that's delegated. So I think this is the appropriate language, because if you're saying that, oh, well, we're gonna have this grant writer at town hall, and the police chief gets to sit at the police station and say, why didn't you go find these grants for me? No, it's your responsibility to go on to the Justice Department. It's your responsibility to go out there and find state grants, 911 grants. It's your responsibility, because even if you're a grant writer, there's an annual 911 grant. There's annual grants related to traffic enforcement that are done at the police station. And there are different sergeants that have a responsibility to handle those. The ultimate responsibility is the person sitting in the chair to go out and find money. So how they accomplish that, otherwise you're giving them an open door to pass the buck. Did you bring in any grant money? No, I didn't go look. That's the grant person's problem. We looked at this language, and you're taking away a responsibility they have statutorily, and you're taking away a responsibility, you're actually giving them an out. They have a responsibility to find money.
Yeah. No, I think we're doing it the right way. The member has a question.
I'm simply responding to the question.
No, Chief, yeah, because one of the things I said from the onset with Maureen and Jody was any changes had to be approved with the chief. If he said no for whatever reason, then we would not include those.
Money doesn't only come from the state and the federal government, it's available from other resources.
Right.
So I just thought you might build into that last sentence, financial grant or financial assistance from state, federal agencies, or other available financial resources.
You're correct, Ian, because we receive grants from China, the hospital, the health network related to opioids and other private sources out there. And we work with Amy Leone to accomplish that. So it's not the police chief is sitting writing the grant, which I write grants with Amy, but very good point, Dan.
Would you repeat the language that you used now?
The last sentence, seeks
Dan, go slow for that. Finish.
No, it just got last week.
seeks financial
He's a slow writer.
grants
I'm gonna bring a tape recorder next time.
or other financial assistance from state, federal, and federal agencies or other available financial resources.
Thank you.
The next bullets, a few bullets we added completely, and again, in agreement. Part of, when I spoke with Dino originally, and Jody and I were talking, what we wanted to do here is capture the great work that's been done, and part of that is the work that's being done through the special operations team. But when the chief and I spoke, it actually goes well beyond that. There's a lot of work being done at the school and the hospital and other places. So rather than be too specific, we added a more general bullet that just says, provide leadership with a continued focus on building and enhancing relationships with the school community, including students and staff. And that way it took out any specific activity, and it also left it open for whoever comes in down the road for whatever new programs they'd like to implement as well. Bullet number 9 is also new, develops and integrates new techniques, practices, and programs, including the use of technology and social media to improve effectiveness of police administration in the town. Again, this was written really broadly too, because we all know technology is changing so fast it's hard to keep up, so if we put any particular thing that's current now, it will be outdated just as quickly as this one was. So we left it in a broader way. And then the next one, may perform law enforcement and other policing duties, including patrol, investigation, traffic control, and a variety of other duties designed to preserve peace and order, to protect life and property in the town. The rest of that bullet was already existing.
Excuse me, may we go back and just look at bullet number 8, please? I'm not sure that, do you mind repeating what you had said for bullet number 8, please, Maureen?
Sure. And it should be in your new version, I think, right? Provides leadership with a continued focus on building and enhancing relationships with the school community, including
Yeah.
Maureen, that's not what it says.
I don't have.
You added students to staff,
Oh,
it
I
stands with
apologize.
schools.
Okay.
Provides leadership to all personnel and builds and enhances relationships with the schools.
Okay.
That's what I have in front of me.
That's the old one.
Shouldn't it also include the rest of the community, or is that covered in another bullet?
I think that's covered in another
It
bullet.
speaks of community relations also. And this is a focus on schools. Schools are a very big part of what you do every day. And to have those relationships with school resource officers and other officers in and out of schools, just to ensure that things are okay there. So they don't spill out of the school into the neighborhoods. But it's It's a matter of just working closely, having that, developing that relationship, which is not required by state law.
And should that bullet include anything about security or training protocols, or does that?
It's too specific, and that's why
Okay.
we took out information that was too specific, because it's not the police chief's sole decision. You know, when they pass changes in the criminal justice reform, some of it was developing a mutual aid agreement or a work agreement with the schools. So they have responsibilities, we have responsibilities, they have as much say as we do. So it's a matter of working collaboratively to make sure that kids are safe and that things are operating well in the schools. There's a real concern on the part of the legislature that over the years, police officers were being drawn in to do work that heretofore was dealt with administratively. And when I was a kid in school, you know, the principal yelled at you and then called your parents. Well, having police officers in the schools, we just found there was a transition where they involve police officers more and more in administrative matters, things that should be dealt.
Well, what I'm referring to is and perhaps I'm incorrect about this, but do you provide training to the teachers for emergency preparedness?
We do.
So is it, so are you saying that that's too much to
But we
include in
do,
here?
right, we do that. We provide them with the panic button system. We provide them with the red dot system. We provide them with how do you know, teach kids as far as when you evacuate, when do you stay put, et cetera. So, and at each grade level, it's a different response. You can't expect kids at elementary level to react the same way you might suggest to high school kids to react.
Right, but what I'm suggesting is something about that training piece be added into this bullet.
That might be
I
something
think
that comes up
that's
in the
over,
interview
that's in
process as
the,
well.
that's in the agreement that we have with the schools. We'll do these things and you're gonna do these things. And that can change. It can readily change. I think to have this broad language that, you know, you have a responsibility to have a relationship with the school system because they do and they should have as much say in those protocols as the police department. Frankly, they should have more.
Mike?
Thank you, Peter. Mr. Chairman, I should say, Mr. Harrison sitting here is a 6-year member, and I was a 9-year member of the school committee. The public has to know that every single cruiser in the town of Milford has a notebook in it, and in that notebook is the layout of every single school. And the one thing that we've taught the teachers is that, there's a lot of things that we taught teachers and administration, is that if there's a threat, always when you call in your room number. And as the chief said, the big red dot, that's where you teach the children to go to. But if the threat is internal, we teach evacuation, get out. Doesn't matter what door you go out, get out. But if the threat is external, then we lock down the buildings. So to the chief's point is that it's a collaboration between the police department, the school resource officers, and the administration, and even the faculty, and Scott, you can speak to this as well, is that, you know, we do a phenomenal job in this community, and I'm just gonna real quick bring up a quick story. 2 years ago, a former Patriot player came to give the awards out to Special Olympics. His name wasn't on the docket. He couldn't get into high school. And he said, "Oh, I'm so-and-so from the Patriots." And the woman said, "I'm sorry." So the schools in Milford are very, very safe. And the reason that they are safe, and I'm sorry, Don, I don't mean to go off on this, but there's been questions about how safe the schools are in Milford. The schools in Milford, the buildings in Milford are very, very safe because of the collaboration that we have with our police department and anybody that's involved in it, town hall, schools, whatever it is.
And I completely understand.
I think one of
that
the
schools
things
are
that-
safe. I think
Yeah.
there's a little bit of confusion about what my point is.
Well, I think I understand, and I think if we leave it broad enough in the job description itself, then during the interview process, you can allude and you can speak with the candidates about the kinds of things that they're familiar with in working with schools, how they might partner with them. If you put too many of the details in here, it might be a little more limiting. So I think if we do keep it broad in terms of the partnership with the school community and embracing that as a general aspect, when you get to the part where this committee is doing the interviews, you can call out specifically, in your town, what have you done with your school? How have you partnered with them? What have you done? And that might draw out some of the other things, and then they can also certainly highlight what's been done here.
Okay.
So I have a suggestion.
Go ahead, Judy.
The sentence that you have for number 8 in your documents right now is pretty basic. The one that Maureen read, I'm going to reread it so you can hear it again. Provides leadership with a continued focus on building and enhancing relationships with the school community, including students and staff. I was thinking including student and staff safety.
And I guess my point is that I don't feel as if it's robust enough for what the responsibilities and what the reality is, what the police department provides to the school department. That seems to, it goes beyond the relationships. It's actual physical, training and implementation of safety protocols. So
So I think we can come up with a couple of sentences and send them back out. and
But
see if
those
the
are found
community-
over, there's a separate agreement, and that agreement's dealt with every several years. And it's a matter of looking, active shooter training for school personnel. Do you lock down? Do you get out? How do you work things? Where do you gather? All of those things are addressed in law now requires it, that you have those in every community. So it's very much like passing the state law, and then you get regulations that are created by the state agency or a federal agency. Congress passes a law, and then the agency is authorized to create regulations that fall under that particular statute. So the statute itself is broad, and then you come over here and the Code of Federal Regulations, Code of Mass Regulations are more defined. And that's what you're seeing here. I don't have a problem going back to some of the language that Maureen and Jody just discussed as far as the relationships with others. I think if you start to get finite in the job description, now you go to deal with, that agreement evolves.
And it has to be a cooperative relationship with the school department.
Chief,
They might
No,
think,
excuse me, Dan. Jim, then Ken.
yeah, no, in relation to what Donna's saying, it's a cooperative relationship between the school district and the police department. What we might suggest could be, in their opinion, too intense. So it's a working relationship, so it can't be too specific. In general, you have to do what it says, work with the school department to enhance safety. You can't specifically state that it's our job to do things that they might not necessarily agree with. And it's worked out. We're doing very well.
Thank
So,
you. Donato?
Chief, during a serious incident, you and the superintendent of schools are side by side at this incident that's going on in the school. Who has command authority?
If it's a serious law enforcement incident, the
Right,
police,
there's a shooter
the
inside.
police chief.
You're both there.
Police-
There's no cooperative effort. You are in charge.
Correct.
Right, okay, I think that's what Donna wants to establish here.
Thank you. Yeah.
But that's established, is my point. That's established over here. There's an understanding.
No, I'm just,
Well,
Oh, and I'm saying to you, over in a separate agreement, all of those things are established. We have responsibilities, they have responsibilities. I mean, something as simple as, can you go search that student's locker? I can't. I'm a law enforcement officer. I need a warrant, Fourth Amendment. The schools don't. New Jersey TLO. All they need is reasonable suspicion. Now, I can't ask them to go search their locker. Now they're acting as my agent. So all of these things have been worked out. And I'm saying to you, if you take a job description and if you start to get that definitive, what you're going to find is you're going to end up with a job description that ultimately is contrary to the actual operations that are out there because they evolve. They evolve based upon introduction to technology, and I mean security technology in the schools. You know, we didn't have, what, 8 years ago where you could scan someone's driver's license and figure out if they were on a sex offender list. They didn't have it at the school. They didn't have locked doors. They didn't have locked doors. Okay, we have access to every door in every school. So my point being is, I think in a job description, you're trying to define policy in a job description. And I think that's fraught with future problems, because you're gonna end up with a policy that's contrary to your job description. And frankly, I don't wanna be the person that ends up in a lawsuit that, you know, now you have to, well, you didn't do that. And that was your obligation.
So Jody just wrote a quick phrase here that I think might serve both of you well. Do you want to read what it says?
Sure, just partner with school community in regards to safety protocols and preparedness.
Bang, right on.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was
Chairman,
just-
if I may excuse that for
I was just gonna suggest that the two people do get together and do what you did. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
It took just a second.
Yeah.
I think that covers what you needed, and it refrains from getting too deep with the chief.
Could you repeat that again? You kind of went by too quick.
Partner
We'll do
with
it again,
school-
Richard.
Yeah, partner with school community in regards to safety protocols and preparedness.
And we'll send this out to you as well.
Thanks, Tom.
I don't know where we stand with time.
No, go ahead, yep.
The next change is to, is that still item 15? Yeah, item 15,
Oh, wait a minute, could you go back to 11?
yes.
I don't have, that's not, it's very unclear to me what that is stating.
Okay, that was in the original one, and I think, Chief, we didn't make any changes to that, correct?
I think that was not a change that we made.
I understand that, but I
So-
don't understand what it means, and I think it needs clarification.
This is the one, let's just clarify, number 11, operates and maintains department-issued firearms.
Do you
Is
have
that
a
the one you're
suggestion?
speaking of?
I don't know why we're saying this. Operates and maintains department-issued firearms, operates and maintains department-issued fire, read the logic of the statement now. Operates and maintains. He doesn't operate, well, I guess he does. He operates and maintains his own. He doesn't operate and maintain anybody else's. He's responsible that they know how to operate and maintain. And other police department equipment, the same thing. I don't think it's a logical statement, is my point.
It should be, Daniel, I agree, it should be maintains department-issued equipment.
No, you don't maintain, you're responsible that it is maintained, but you don't maintain it. You maintain your own, I
So
guess.
you're responsible for all,
Right, you're
chapter
responsible that
4197A,
everybody else.
you're responsible for all of the equipment.
You're responsible that everybody is capable of operating and that all equipment is properly maintained. And I just think it needs that type of clarification.
Okay.
Everybody's trained to operate all of the firearms and the equipment. Everybody's trained to maintain it, and you have overall responsibility to make sure that's done.
Could it be oversees the operation and maintenance of department-issued firearms?
Right.
Police department?
Maintenance, rather than maintains.
Yeah, oversees the operation and maintenance of department-issued firearms and other police department
Yeah.
equipment.
Chief, is that okay?
Maintain sounds accurate.
Okay. Good intent.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
The rest of the bullets under that section are fine, and we get to minimum qualifications. One of the things that we removed with the chief's guidance was that a master's degree, and we took out criminal justice law enforcement. As the chief pointed out, the master's degree might be in a number of other fields that were associated with that, and so we asked that we take that one out.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask
Yes.
a question? Just grammatically, I'm not the best grammatical person in the world. The semicolon in there, it pretty much says that these are the requirements up at the top, and then you have the semicolon and it says, or any equivalent combination. So can you just explain, because that seems to kind of,
It's actually very standard in almost all job descriptions. It'll
Yeah.
tell you that What they're asking for is a certain level of education, a certain amount of experience, but if you have more experience that offsets a certain amount of education, or you have education which is enough to qualify, so almost all job descriptions will say.
So it gives you a little bit of leeway to say, yes, you're very educated in this area, but that's what I'm trying to understand.
You don't need that some, I don't think.
Is it the grammar piece, or is it the content that you're asking about? I
Yeah,
guess that's-
basically both, because to me, that semicolon changes everything, and that's why I don't
Why
understand
does it change everything? Because I have an issue also.
it. It says or any equivalent, it's almost
Ah.
says,
Right.
So who determines what the equivalent
Right.
is?
that's kind of what
Very
just
ambiguous.
because I understand the top part, so obviously you outline exactly 10 years master's degree, 5 years in command, all that kind of stuff. And then it seems like the semicolon, and you say it's standard, I'm not in this business, so I don't understand that, and I'm sure you'll explain it to me. It seems like the semicolon changed the two, or equivalent, like, or what we decide,
So, and it can be. So, for example, there are sometimes when a master's degree might be preferred in a certain job with 5 years experience, let's say. But instead a person has a bachelor's degree and 15 years of experience. And the hiring party, whether it's a committee, an individual, a manager, or an appointing authority, will determine and say, okay, we're fine with that. This committee needs to decide, is there a mandatory requirement here that's not about a combination, or is it absolutely required that a master's is required, or is it preferred? Those are the kind of decisions, but that's how that language ends up.
Okay, and that's how I read it. I just wanted to be sure, because it almost seemed like then we have discretion. The semicolon portion gives us discretion.
It does.
Is really what it comes down
And
to.
that's what's intended in the job
I
description.
just, like I said, I'm not the best grammatical person, so.
And my
But Chris, you came across very literate though, not that.
I can pretend well.
the same,
Absent 4 years, right
on the
there.
same issue, my point is having evaluated people for the job is that it gives you too much discretion. What you have is an unqualified person under the awe who says, whatever you might say. I graduated from high school and I worked for the Boy Scouts and I was on the auxiliary force and I supervised a bunch of buffoons. And the guy who wants to get him selected says, that's equivalent to a master's degree. It can't be that broad, because that's exactly what happened the last time.
Scott, I'm sorry, Dan.
All right, so we need some clarification of the or. The or has got to make sure that it is absolute, because of the 12 evaluators here, they can interpret that last phrase anything they want, and that cannot be, because I've seen it terribly abused.
Chief, one second. Scott has his hand up for one thing. Scott?
Thank you. I think with relation to this, what it does is it does give the appointing authority as well as this committee the flexibility to, one, if we've identified, and Jody, you brought this up at previous meetings, and Maureen, we've discussed this with other job descriptions, which is, what it does is that if we find what we determine to be a qualified candidate, based on background, experience, they've been running this, they've been doing all this equivalent work, if we were to not have that, but they don't have one of these pieces in there, if we don't keep this broad, no matter how much, it could be a 12-0 vote, that we all believe that this is the best person for this role, and say, oh my goodness, we don't even need to send 3, we don't, or 5, we just send this one, this is it. That's great, but if they don't have that qualification, because we tighten up that language too much, we couldn't appoint that person or send them forward even if we wanted to. This allows it to be that flexibility. The reality is, and the chief has said this at previous meetings, is the likelihood of us finding somebody without a master's degree that's looking to get to this point, because we have the Quinville in Massachusetts that doesn't have that, is very unlikely. But it does give us that one little out, that if we find a qualified candidate, to be able to do that.
And Chief?
I think this is obviously we moved down the page to a very important section compared to some of the things we talked about. And I think we can have a discussion, but I think it's also stuff, I'd like to be able to take a meeting or whatever to weigh the things in my own mind as to what we say, because we're presenting stuff here, but I didn't see it that way at first time, but maybe after the discussion and then discuss this at another meeting, because this is a key, of all the things here, I think a key element. And have a discussion, give it some time and discuss it again and see what we think. That's.
Chief?
From experience, I'll say to you, I've probably served on 30 police chief search committees in this state in my career. And I'll say this to you, I agree with Dan in this respect. It's not how we will see the candidates that apply, it's how the people that might apply see whether they fit. And I'll give you an example. There was a community where a sergeant on the department, he didn't have the requisite experience. He had the education they required. So he had the bachelor's degree it was a master's degree, so it was a chief's position. But he didn't have the experience. He only served as a sergeant for a couple of years. And he submitted an application. And his argument was, well, I'm a major in the National Guard. I manage more people than live in half of this town. So I have the management experience. And they didn't have the or. It was you needed this. And the committee started to discuss, well, you know, we ought to let him come in. And respectfully, I told him, if you do that, I can't sit here. Because how many candidates out there didn't submit because they didn't fit the qualifications? I think you're opening yourselves up that, you know, if you say and or a combination, this and that, what's the right combination, as Mr. Nero said? What is the right combination? Is it, well, instead of 10 years supervisory experience, it's 5 because you have this, or you have that. It's so open to interpretation. I think it's difficult if you're an applicant. Now, there's going to be, believe me, you're going to have enough applicants that fit in if you solidify your point, as Scott mentioned. We have the educational incentive, and that's why when we get into that whole advertisement of salaries and benefits, oh, and we have benefits. Yeah, well, if you don't put in there the fact you have educational incentive, parentheses the Quinn bill, then you're going to miss a lot of candidates. That's a huge incentive.
Do you think that should be part of the description?
I think no, because that can change, and that's, you know, that's subject to.
It can be part of the posting, not part of the description.
I think it can be in the posting because we have it right now. I wouldn't put it in the job description because you may not have it next year. I just, in looking at that and or, what do I think is valid versus what do you think is valid? And as I said, even worse, who's not applying or who is applying because because we can't define it. If I said to everybody here, write down what you think that means. What is the and or? What's the equivalent, right? I'll tell you, we're going to come up with a hodgepodge. And that's what you're doing to people that are sitting out there saying, should I look at this position? Just a thought.
Thanks, Chief. Chris, and then Ed, and then Julie.
Mr. Chairman, I think, to be honest with you, I agree with Ed. I think that this is a topic, I think that's pretty important. And I don't think that we should hold up the rest of what we're doing now, because I think it's a broader discussion. That maybe we should talk about it at another meeting. Pass by this. I think the chief brings up a lot of good points. Like, to me, I didn't even think about the major. To me, that makes him qualified. Like, we disagree on that, but my point is I think we should have that big conversation, because I think that that's one of the important things. So I think maybe we'll hold up too much of this, because I think that this, out of this whole document, it's one of the more important things. So if we stop here, I think we're going to be stuck in this, spinning our wheels on this particular topic for quite a while.
Why don't we just go on then?
Yeah, just food for thought.
Yeah.
And Chris, that's 2 points now. We'll have the minutes before.
You're getting worried here.
Give me a big head now, dude.
Go ahead. Thank you. All these comments are, you know, right on, and that's what we wanted.
Oh, no, the other two.
Special requirements, want to talk about that?
That one's actually as is. We didn't add it. We had originally added some things, but in speaking with the chief, they were not necessarily.
Want to talk about it? Hello, I want to talk about it.
Sure, absolutely.
You have valid Massachusetts motor vehicle license. Obviously, the guy from Tennessee doesn't have that. So we need to give him, within 6 months, you have to have a valid, something,
30
some
days.
parameter.
30 days.
30 days.
30 days by statute.
I'm sorry, but
I'm sorry, it's 30 days by statute.
What's
By
the...
statute.
Once he becomes a resident of Massachusetts, he has 30 days to...
Oh, okay, then
Just so you
it
know.
should read
Yeah,
that
we'll
way.
put that in.
Once you become a resident, within 30 days, something. Once a residency is established, you have 30 days to get the
Correct.
license.
Mr. Chairman,
Chris?
sorry, stupid question again. Say he wants to live in Woonsocket.
We have no
He can live
residency
15
requirement.
miles border to
But
border.
the only thing is it says a valid Massachusetts license.
Right.
What if he lives in Rhode Island?
He's got to have it's not going to happen.
Once again, it's a stupid question, I don't know.
Not going to happen. He's got to have a valid Massachusetts driver's
You
license.
can get a Massachusetts license and live in Rhode Island?
If you work here full-time,
Once again, I don't know how this works, so.
no, and what you're looking at too is, so there's a couple different, one thing that's not in here, which we can deal with another time, but no, he's got to have a mass driver's license if he's going to be operating our vehicles.
Yes.
So he,
Why does he have to have that? Excuse me.
Yeah.
Why can't he use the reciprocity of a Rhode
It's-
Island?
I'm just telling you what, this is what
Is there a
you,
law?
this is what you commonly see.
I understand that, but he's got a real good point.
once again, like I said, Chief, you know the stuff, I don't know the stuff. Like, you can live in Woonsocket and have a Massachusetts license?
No, I don't think you can.
No.
Once again, I just find these little things, I don't know, they don't make sense to me, but maybe they're
So
silly.
Chief, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, I'm sorry, Dino, I don't mean to be
That's
rude,
okay.
Mr. Chairman. That's a great question. So if somebody lived in, say, North Smithfield, which is only roughly 8 miles away,
Yeah.
we hired them as the chief, are
You-
they able to drive on a Rhode Island license, or they have to have a Mass
Yes, you
license?
don't, you know, you can, there's
Just a question,
reciprocity in the
and to
50
Chris's
states.
point, I just want to know it for myself.
There's reciprocity in the 50 states.
Right.
You
Do they
can
have
drive
to
on
have a
any
Mass
license. The question is, does the law require you to have a mass license? I saw it in all the ads, but I thought, I didn't think of it at that point.
Right.
It's actually the civil service, I mean, if you find the civil service, I'll have to take a look.
Okay, to
Oh,
be,
okay, all right, all
to be
right. So,
discussed later.
thank you, thank you.
Dino,
Yes.
on special requirement, just a question, maybe the chief can. It says police officer by the Massachusetts Police Training Commission. Somebody comes in from Tennessee.
Right.
Within how many days does he have to qualify?
So what they do is, if you went to the academy in any other state, you bring all the curriculum, you bring all your materials, you go to the MVTC, you submit them, you fill out the forms. What they will do is they will look at the training that you received, and generally those folks, you're already CPR trained, you're already all the requirements, those things. So they'll require that person, so if the person came from Rhode Island, they'll require him to go to an academy and sit in on the criminal law segments. They'll require him to sit in on different segments that are specifically related to Massachusetts law. And from there, they will certify them. They will give them a waiver until such time as they're certified. The other thing is, there is a distance that you can live from the community. So it's 15 miles border to border as the crow flies. So it's, you sit
I
down.
didn't understand what you just said.
You have to live within 15 miles of the community. And the way they measure it is you take the border of Milford.
Not the measurement now.
Sorry.
Is that a statute?
Yes,
It's a requirement if you are a what, police officer?
police officer, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I think we're down to knowledge. We took out, there was a statement in there after,
We just put it here, that was just a grammar change, so it's just.
oh, okay. So we just moved it around, we're not even going to discuss that one. But we added at the, let's see, later in that sentence, thorough knowledge of town, state, and federal laws and regulations and statutes. That was in addition to that item.
I'm having a hard time understanding and maybe it's just me, maybe I need to read it out loud, but the phrase, the standards by which the quality of police service is evaluated and.
Donna, were you reading from that?
Under knowledge, we're still in the knowledge section.
Okay.
So, extensive knowledge of the principles and practices of modern police administration and police methods, comma, and then this is where the standards by which the quality of police service is evaluated and the use of police records and their application to police administration. I'm lost in that phrase.
How about deleting the and just a comma?
Where are you suggesting that go to now?
After evaluated, third line down, we delete the and, which I think is confusing, but the use of police records.
Yeah, the use of police records in there, I'm missing something in the translation. I don't know if there.
Was this in there?
It was in the original one.
Yeah.
Yes.
It does feel like the sentence
Yeah,
is
so why
missing
don't you-
something at the end, like
Yeah.
it drops off
Why don't
without
you rework
anything
it?
else. So I think that's something we can take a look at and come back with a proposal for the next
Okay.
time if you'd like and try to clean that up.
Just as we're looking, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. if I-
Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you. Just as we're looking at some of these things, so a lot of the stuff that we're going through, we're able to quantify these things because we can say, do you have a degree, you have producer evidence, we can do all those things. Some of this stuff, like extensive knowledge of principles, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm trying to understand how we would be able to quantify that either through an application and or interview process.
Well, can I try to
That's a
respond?
question I'm honestly asking. Yeah.
It's a very important question, by the way.
Go ahead, then.
What we did was we published the short form that you suggested for the ad. What we got back was standard resumes. Then we started to try to figure out how you're going to evaluate them. The evaluation is the bylaw and the job description. You never asked those questions. They're not in the ad. So you were stuck with a guy who said, I've been a police chief for 10 years, but he skipped over all the BS that we then had to evaluate. And you couldn't evaluate him. You had to give him a 0 in that particular area. So what I think we need to do is to publish the standards of evaluation. And we have to agree on what those standards are going to be. If we're going to go with the short form ad, did you get the ad that I sent you? I sent you an ad, email ad, 4 weeks ago. Anyhow, my thought process is if we want to go with the short form ad, and it's easier and cheaper and whatever, we have to publish the exact standards we're going to use and tell the respondent, you've got to respond to every one of these numbered and lettered items if you want to get evaluated in them, because we got to come up with a evaluation sheet.
Exactly. That's one of the things Jody and I talked about is once we got past the job description and the posting, that this committee would need to determine what is the application process. And it might require filling out a form just as you suggested, or sending in certain other information.
But we have to publish that so that the guy responds to it.
Correct.
And the prime example was, I think it's patrol and traffic. Who applying for a $150,000 job, unless you ask the question, would ever answer that? Because I did that when I was a rookie. You would never put that in your resume. What do you get for it? A 0. The other guy who put it in and said, as a rookie, I did this, he gets his 5 or 10 points. You have to tell them what they're being evaluated on, because if you don't ask the question, you're not going to get the response, and then you're incapable of evaluating that area.
Donato, can you resend that thing you sent to me 4 weeks ago?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Actually, could you send it to all of us? If that's possible?
Or send it.
No, I'll send it there. Those guys to make sure they get
Way
it.
too long.
I just, as we're thinking about, in the interest of time, obviously, I think we're getting into some things that are far more substantive. I would agree with Ed, just based on the conversation we had with education. I think as we get into some of these more sort of meat and potatoes components, I think if we can, in the interest of time, go through the red line items, and then we can come back and revisit at future meetings some of these other pieces.
And we'll redo it next week, so it's still fresh and all that. That's okay and everything.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Maureen. Jody?
There's no change in the abilities section, really. Under skills, we included actually quite a bit of this. So demonstrated solid interpersonal communication skills, including the exercise of independent judgment to produce desirable outcomes and conflict resolutions. Proven ability to communicate effectively, react calmly, think rationally, and make sound decisions during emergency situations. Requires excellent computer skills and applications used in police work. Demonstrated firearms, driving firearms qualification skills.
Go ahead.
What section is this?
That is under skills.
Right, the whole thing is.
Just about, with just a couple of other ones. We didn't make any changes to physical demands. Motor skills, we just added the last sentence that says requires the operation of a police cruiser and related equipment, communications, radio, firearms, firearms, first aid, CPR equipment, as well as office equipment, including a computer, telephone, fax, and copier. Some of these are sort of standards that you need to put in, just to make sure that you're compliant with highlighting the different kinds of skills that you're going to need. And then we did not make any changes to visual demands at all.
Maureen, so this complies with the ADA and all that?
Yes.
Thanks. Thanks.
Anything else?
Not to the job description.
Thank you.
What do you want to do? Anything else you want to? Like I said, we'll meet next Tuesday and go over this again. We can't take any votes tonight because of Mike's situation and,
We have a sense of the committee thanking the
oh, yeah.
representatives of, tonight. Sense of the committee thanking the non-vote sense.
I send them emails all the time, over here.
You know,
Thank you.
thank
All
you.
right, just a few more items that we can, adjourn for the evening. Chris, I want to thank you for your support on the Finance Committee. Selectmen last night, $50,000 for the article at the annual.
So we have our meeting tomorrow night, Mr. Chairman, and hopefully the committee will give a favorable recommendation on the $50,000.
Thank you very much for your support. Also, on the correspondence, I included a letter I received at the house the other day, so you have a copy of it, and I've also responded to it. You have that aside.
I didn't, I saw your reference to that, but I haven't seen that letter. Is it someplace?
It's in there, that packet that I...
It's in the
Okay, thank you.
Like I told you, any type of correspondence I receive, you'll have a copy of it, because this is, totally transparent, whatever information I have, everybody will have. And,
Excuse me?
yes,
And especially the clerk gets to somehow log that stuff in.
yeah, he has a copy of it. Let me see, so, the information we have from Mike, we'll have to process that. I'll let our town administrator know that Mike, if I word it properly, we hire a lawyer who will go to court, and what Mr. Valani will do is notify the selectmen that that's happening, and then Charles Bodie will be notified. And the next, I'd like to have the next meeting so we can have, continuity here. We did a lot of good work tonight. If we could meet next Tuesday at 7 o'clock in this room. Okay?
What will we be doing as far as?
We'll go over the job description, if there's anything else. Hopefully, not a lawyer, the Superior Court judge could render a decision quickly, or it might take him a couple of weeks, but I don't think we should meet again. We can't take any votes, so hopefully that'll be, Chief, could that be something that the judge could render a decision in 3 or 4 days?
It's up to them.
It's done in 3 or 4 days in the court system. You're lucky if you got 3 or 4 years, unless you somehow get an injunction.
So we just can't have any votes, but we'll continue with that part of the presentation and anything else, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Are we gonna?
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Motion by Scott.
Second.
Second by Ed.